Welcome to Mentofy. Now that you're here, I'm assuming that you have already made your decision to pursue your MBA from a top B school in India and have started or are planning to start your preparation for CAT in the near future. So, before we get into the details, I'll answer the two questions which are probably coming to your mind right now. Who am I and why should you listen to me? So, to answer the first question, my name is Parth. I finished my bachelor's in financial markets from HR College, Mumbai. Post that, I worked for 2 years in the real estate sector. Now, coming to the second question and the more important one, why should you listen to me or why can you trust my advice? First of all, I have been through the process that you will be going through for the next 1 year. And I believe that I have performed decently at it. But of course, don't take my word for it. I'll tell you my credentials and then you can judge it for yourself. So I've scored a 99.75 in CAT 2020 and a 99.97 in XAT 2021. And I will be pursuing my MBA from XLRI Jamshedpur this academic year. Okay, now coming to the more important question and probably the one that you are here for is how to prepare for CAT. So, first of all, I'd like to clarify that there is no one solution for everyone. Everyone has different strengths, different weaknesses, different amount of time that they're willing to put in for CAT. So instead of giving you a plan that probably won't work for you, I'll tell you how I prepared for CAT and how I managed to score a 99.75. So this was my second attempt at CAT. I had actually attempted CAT in 2019 as well, and I had managed to score a 98 percentile. So what helped me improve my preparation, what helped me take myself from 98 percentile to 99.75 is what I'm going to focus on during the next few minutes. So the key differences in 2019 and 2020 for me were that I prepared in isolation in 2019. I had no peer group, no mentor to help me. uh, in 2020, that was the exact opposite. I had a mentor, I had a peer group whom which was the key reason that I was able to crack CAT. So this was the key difference. Secondly, obviously once I was done with basics in 2019, I kept preparing in the same way that I started preparing with. So I kept doing the basics again and again, which I had already done. So this really didn't amount to a lot of improvement for me. In 2020, I did the basics for one last time. I revised before I started taking mocks. But the key difference was that the peer group. So we would after we started taking mocks, we used to analyze every day as in every attempt for 2 to 3 hours. So one thumb rule that we followed was that if it was a 3 hour mock, we would analyze it for 3 hours. If it was a 2 hour mock, we would analyze it for 2 hours. So this is what helped us improve a lot. We learned a lot from each other. We learned better methods to solve the same questions. So this is something that you are going to face during CAT preparation. So especially in the quant section. So there is no one right way to solve one question. There are four different ways to solve a question, and all of them will give you the right answer. But one of the solutions will take you 30 seconds, and one of them will take you 5 minutes. So obviously, the 30 seconds one is better for everyone. So that is something that you learn from others because let's say there's two people. There's a person A, there's a person B. One is good at arithmetic, one is good at geometry. So the B person will help you with geometry. He will tell you better methods. Person A will tell you better methods for arithmetic. So this is how you improve in CAT after a certain point. You can't keep doing the basics again and again and hope to improve because that's not how CAT works. After a certain point, it's not about how good you are at maths, but it's about how good you are at solving the quant section in CAT. So that's something that you have to focus on. This is true for all the sections, for English, for DILR, for quants. You have to learn from others, you have to teach others. This will help you more than anyone. So per section wise, for VRC, I used to read for 1.5 hour every day from different sources like Aeon, uh, Hindu, Scientific Journal, and all that. So this reading habit helped me a lot because this helped me to build my stamina for the VRC section. At the start, you're reading, you're at your 100%, but as you move forward, your stamina is falling down, and so is your comprehension. So when you start reading consistently for months together, for 1.5 hour, the VRC section it will not become, your comprehension will improve, but more importantly, your stamina will improve. So your comprehension level doesn't fall during the mock. So that is how you prepare for VRC on a broad basis. Secondly, for DRR, DRR is a section which is purely based on practice. You have to solve as many sets as possible. You have to expose yourself to as many different types of sets that you can, because this will help you adapt much faster during your CAT examination when you're under time pressure. So when you solve 100 different types of sets, you will be exposed to different types of thinking methods. This will help you tackle the DRR section with confidence, which is more important, which is the most important thing in DRR. You have to have confidence in yourself, otherwise you're going to doubt yourself and you're going to take a lot of time, which you cannot afford to do. For quant section, like I already mentioned, you have to learn from others. Inculcating different methods, better methods is the key to cracking quants. I went from scoring 40 out of roughly 100 to scoring 70 or 80 out of 100 just because of this. Not because I was not done with basics when I was scoring 40. I was done with basics even when I was scoring 40. But when I was scoring 80, my basics were the same, but I was better at how to attempt the quant section. So these are the major differences that were there for me in 2019 and 2020, and this is what helped me to score 99.75. Obviously, this is going to be different for every person. When I understand what is the time that you're willing to put in, the amount of the strengths and weaknesses that you have, uh, accordingly will manage how to improve, how to form a peer group for personally for you, because you need to be with people on your level. So all that stuff which can be customized only after I know your personal details. But this is the broad basis on which how I prepared. So now coming to the material that I personally can vouch for. So for basics, you can use any coaching material, Time, IMS, Sarvesh Verma, Arun Sharma. All of them are good enough for clearing your basics. For mock series, I would suggest IMS plus CL combination. So there are two most popular combinations, that is IMS plus time or IMS plus CL among the CAT aspirants. I personally recommend IMS plus CL because they are more CAT-like, and IMS will provide you with proper benchmarking and CL will provide you with a lot of material which is CAT-like. So that is my personal suggestion. Secondly, obviously any test series is fine. IMS, time, CL, you take any of them, they are going to help you improve. So coming to the more important part, which is the mock analysis of those mocks that you take. So the thumb rule that I already mentioned, for a 2 hour mock, I used to analyze for 2 hours. For a 3 hours mock, I used to analyze for 3 hours. So obviously I can't go into the details of how I used to analyze because that would make the video very long. So I will give you a brief overview of what I used to do. So the most important part of analysis, and which probably most of the CAT aspirants go wrong with, is that don't analyze the questions that they did correctly. So just because you got a question correctly, that doesn't mean that you were efficient in solving that question. Maybe you took 5 minutes to solve one question, which is obviously not the right way to do it. Because if instead of 5 minutes, maybe you could have attempted three questions, which you couldn't attempt just because you gave 5 minutes for it. So the most important part of analyzing is analyzing the questions that you got right and finding better methods for the same. Secondly, obviously you have to go through the questions that you couldn't attempt, because you otherwise you wouldn't realize that whether it was because of time constraint you couldn't solve them, or it was because of lack of preparation. So you go through them, you solve them, you try to find better methods for them as well. And the question that you got wrong, obviously it is a very important factor that you have to take into account, that maybe you were not well prepared, or you have to analyze why did you go wrong. Maybe it was because because you didn't have time. Maybe you just had 20 seconds to solve that question. Then obviously you're not going to solve. There is a high chance that you're going to make some silly error. Or was it because you lack in that particular chapter? So you have to go back to preparing for that chapter specifically. So all these things are something that you have to keep in mind. Obviously, analyzing mock is a very tedious process, but you have to go through it because that is where you're going to improve. So one thing you have to remember about CAT is 50% is your preparation and 50% is your mock analysis. So they are equally important and you cannot ignore either of them. So that is it for mocks. Obviously, I'll tell you how to analyze mocks in more detail when we have a one-on-one session, because I can go into more detail, I can take more time. So that's it for now. This is how I, this is the material that I use, and this is the mock series that I use, and this is how I analyzed my mocks. Okay, now coming to the next question, what is the difference between the different tests that you're going to take? For example, CAT and XAT. So one thing that you have to remember is that if you are well prepared for CAT, you are probably well prepared for most of the other exams because they have the same sections, which is quants, VARC, and DILR. So there are a few exams like that. It has additional section called DM. CMAT has additional section called which is GK. So I'll take into consideration only CAT and XAT. So like I mentioned, if you're done with QA, DRR, and English for CAT, you're done for QA, DRR, and English for you're mostly 99% of the portion is done for XAT as well. So the only different section is DM. So how I prepared for DM section is that I went through the past XAT papers, that official XAT papers. You have to understand how XLRI thinks. You have to understand what are the question answers that they think are correct. Because after a point of time, you're always going to be confused between two different options because it are at the end of the day, it is these are ethical questions. So there you might be thinking that this is more ethical, but XLRI thinks that no, that this is more ethical, and you have to understand how XLRI thinks. So to crack the exam, that is obviously. So obviously it's their exam, so you have to get the answers right, and the only way to get them right is if you understand how XLRI thinks. So that's something that you can only do through past years AT papers, and that is how I did it, and I managed to score a decent percentile in this particular section as well. So like just like this, there are different papers, but that is something that you can prepare for when and as and when those exams come. Initially, you just have to prepare for CAT. You'll get ample amount of time between those papers, so you can prepare for those different intricacies of every paper during that time that you have. And I don't think that will be a issue if you are well prepared for CAT. So with that, we come to the end of the video. I hope it was useful for you. Obviously, we'll make more personalized plans as and when you're allocated to your personal mentors, and I'm sure we will be able to help you improve your scores drastically. With that, goodbye and all the best.